I had a look at the Terminator film the other day, Terminator Dark Fate, and I was actually quite impressed with the movie for the most part. I thought Mackenzie Davis played a great part. I thought the character of Danny Ramirez was interesting, but overall, I generally felt that she couldn't quite carry the presence. There was a presence that was required for the role, and she wasn't able to deliver that. But what really struck me about this film was the arc that Arnold Schwarzenegger had, and I really enjoyed the concept of the T-800 taking over the name Carl in honour of Carl Reese, and beginning a family and becoming a, a father or uncle like figure. And I think Schwarzenegger in this movie really explored the cyborg element of the Terminator, the part man, part machine. Because for the most part, we see Terminator as more of a machine, just wearing human skin with blood, tissue. But I thought that Schwarzenegger in this movie took it a little bit further than that, showing as close to human emotion as he could get, more than he has before. I mean, there's a case to be made that he has done this in previous films, particularly with John Connor, but he felt more human in this picture. How he was dressed, how he conducted himself, the remorse he showed. And I think that storyline could have been explored a little bit further. Another character that I thought was also very interesting was the Rev 9. It sounds very nitpicky, but I would probably have had the Rev 9 dressed wearing black so that it fitted a little bit more with the skeleton, that his skeleton or twin, detachable twin, so to speak, which I thought was a really interesting element, that he could replicate himself and have this Terminator type twin running around. I don't think that they utilised the double team enough. But there was also an element that stuck out to me about the Rev 9, and that he questions the T-800 about why won't you just let me kill Danny Ramirez? Because we both programmed the same way. We both had the same mission. And I thought that this was very interesting, because I think this was the first villain that had actually questioned Arnold Schwarzenegger's character and try to touch them in an area that they've got in common. Because the T-1000 didn't do this, and the TX most certainly didn't. And I wouldn't really say that John Connor did in Genisys either. And by doing this, I really felt that the Rev 9 showed a manipulative side. And I thought that this could be your first manipulative Terminator. He certainly was, the way that he would with his southern accent, the way he would speak to some of the other guys in the army. And I thought that this was all we saw of this. We saw so little of this in the film, and I thought that was a massively wasted opportunity. I think there could have been several scenes with the Rev 9 and the T-800. They saved it right to the very end for them to even have a 30-second conversation, because obviously the Rev 9 is a Terminator and they were trying to keep him in that mode. But with that said, we've seen this before, and I think we needed to see this android behave a lot more human. I've always been very fascinated in Terminator with the whole human versus cyborg, or cyborg versus android part. And in this movie, I'd say that we have two cyborgs versus an android. We have the T-800, who's more machine human versus and Mackenzie Davis, who's more human machine, against this android who is programmed to act very, very human. Another element, though, that I couldn't blank from my mind was I couldn't understand why the Rev 9 in his Terminator form would have red eyes or even look like a Terminator, because he was not made from Skynet. He came from Legion. And if Legion is a new artificial intelligence or computer, or whatever the case may be, I would have expected the product to look slightly different from Skynet. Now, I guess that a case could be made that everything, that Skynet's files were taken over to Legion, and everything from Legion is just following on from Skynet. But that didn't resonate with me. I felt they needed something different. And I know that people may disagree with me on this, because I'd say, well, Benjamin, that takes it away from the Terminator. He's not going to look like a Terminator at all, is he? Well, I would have been, personally, I'd be open for that. And I would have liked to have found that a little bit more of Legion. This new omnipresent villain is taking over from the all-powerful Skynet, and all we hear that is that it gets mentioned. I'd like to have seen elements of this Legion, and they're probably trying to save it for another movie, but I think they should have put it into this film. So overall, I thought it was a very well done movie, but from the get-go, it had a problem. And in my opinion, I don't think there can be another Terminator sequel. I will say this, having not seen the Sarah Connor Chronicles, but I think that as so many others have said before me, the first film had a great formula: a cybernetic assassin sent back in time to kill Sarah Connor. Then you use the villain, or a version of the villain, as a hero in the next film with a more advanced model. There's not really... Is there any other formula you can use after that? Is there anywhere else that you can go? And they destroyed Skynet in the second film, so they've tried to explore something different with the introduction of Legion, but it just feels very rehashed. It feels like it's forced, and there's not much further they can go. Now, with that said, I will repeat myself, and since they did introduce Legion, we should have been able to have seen slightly more of this. The Rev 9 was a good villain, but he was following in the footsteps of the TX and the T1000s, in my opinion. He didn't offer really any further character development. Nothing made him stick out above the other villains, or really unique from the other villains, with the exception that he could split himself in two. It reminds me actually of there's an episode of the X-Files called Humbug, where this might be a bit of a spoiler, but there's a Siamese twin who can separate from his brother, and it really reminded me of that. And it was a terrific idea, but I just think that there was a lot of elements and concepts in this movie that could have been explored more. I don't think this movie really is a cinema job. I think it should have been done as a big television movie. And I know that sounds very sad to say that about the Terminator, that it's come to that, but I don't think Terminator landing on television would have been bad at all. I think it would have opened a lot more opportunities for character exploration. I would also make a case that maybe they didn't need as many. The action sequences were pretty quick, but the movie cost a lot of money, and maybe we needed to focus on character more and not so much on the action, because we've seen a lot of this action before anyway. I think they are going to have some real trouble following this movie on. If they do, it once again it will follow the same formula, or they'll end up going into the regions of Terminator Salvation, which I thought was an okay film. It was a bold attempt to take the Terminator franchise in a different direction. It didn't pay off, but it was creative, and they stepped out the comfort zone. I think it needs to be stopped now. Uh, that's just my take on it. Schwarzenegger did a great job. The acting was, I enjoyed the acting, and I think that the actors deserve a lot of credit for the amount of work that went into this movie. Linda Hamilton, absolutely outstanding, returning to the role. I didn't mind Amelia Clark, but I don't think her or Jai Courtney were particularly well suited in Genisys. Genisys, however, did have concepts that I think had been applied years ago. I think some of the concepts in Genisys and some of the concepts used in Dark Fate, the splitting Terminator, the travelling back in time again, back to the 80s, would have been very, very interesting. I think if they had combined those concepts and used that in a third film 20 years ago, to completely ignoring Terminator 3, I think we would have had a great third film. I think we would have. Where would it have retread? Would it have gone over old ground again? Close to, but it certainly would have. It certainly would have mixed the pot up a lot in the third film to finish off that series. Perhaps a battle with Skynet should have happened in the third film.